My sister loved playing one of the boys. She spent her days bossing her brothers around, making them buy her tampons and even wash her underwear. At their engagement party, Thomas held out the ring to her. She laughed right in front of the room full of guests. Thomas, are you seriously still doing this? I think of you as my bro, and you want to marry me? That is so gross. Everyone in the hall froze. But she did not seem to care at all. After all, Thomas had been in love with her since they were kids. She assumed that this time, like the countless times before, he would swallow his pride and beg for her forgiveness. But Thomas just stayed silent for a few seconds, then snapped the velvet ring box shut. Then he turned his gaze to me, sitting quietly in the corner. Amy Newell, will you marry me? I walked up to the stage. Cindy pulled my arm, whispering, Amy,
You are not well.
do not push yourself. That old excuse again. But this time I was not backing down. I let out a soft laugh, shook off her hand, and stood right in front of Thomas. I will do it. My dad let out a visible sigh of relief. Cindy's face completely fell. Amy, have you lost your mind? I looked her in the eyes. Didn't you say marriage is outdated and suffocating? You cannot call it trash, and then get mad when someone else cleans it up.
Can you?
Cindy's jaw tightened, completely speechless. Thomas, however, smiled. He took the microphone and spoke clearly to the crowd.
Great.
The Harrison Group formally chooses Amy Newell. The spotlights that were supposed to shine on Cindy now fell entirely on me. Cindy stood a few feet away, crossing her arms with a cold sneer. She was not genuinely panicked.
Yet.
She thought Thomas was just trying to make her jealous. After all, for years, all she had to do was shrug and say, Come on, bro. Do not be mad. And Thomas would always run back to her in the car on the way home. The silence was suffocating. Cindy was the first to break it. I had no idea. Amy, you play the quiet, fragile sister so well. But you sure move fast when it is time to steal something. I looked out the window at the passing city lights. Didn't you say you did not want him? She choked on her words. I continued. You told everyone he was your brother. People do not marry their brothers. I am just helping you respect the sacred bond of brotherhood. Why are you so upset? Cindy turned pale. My mother immediately jumped in to defend her. Amy, stop taking digs at your sister. She was just speaking without thinking. Tonight, speaking without thinking almost cost us the Harrison Group's entire investment. My father frowned.
Amy.
I turned to look at him.
Dad.
I am just stating facts. The car fell silent again. Cindy suddenly smiled, softening her tone. I did not want to marry him, because I refused to be trapped in a domestic cage. But you are different. You have been sickly since you were a kid. You cannot handle the high-pressure world of the Harrison family. I'm only looking out for you.
I was so tired of hearing that.
Looking out for me? That why she secretly changed my college major application? Is that why she rejected career opportunities on my behalf? Is that why she stole my project proposal and put her own name on it? I pulled my tablet from my bag, unlocked it, and opened a folder. I turned the screen toward them. This what you call looking out for me?
On the screen was a detailed log
of every single time my life had been sabotaged. Since childhood. I swiped through them slowly. The only sound in the car was the heavy breathing of my parents. My mother's expression grew incredibly tense. Why on earth are you keeping a record of this? I looked at her, because I realized that without hard evidence, my side of the story is always treated as a lie. Cindy finally sat up straight. Do you honestly think I stole your opportunities?
Didn't you? I asked.
Her eyes welled with tears. I shielded you from those things, because I was afraid the stress would make you sick. Did you ever bother to ask me what I wanted? She froze. When did I ever say I did not want to go? I asked. When did I ever give you permission to rewrite my life? Cindy, stop calling your greed protection. My dad glared at me. We are a family. Do not use such ugly words. I smiled.
Dad.
It is called being clear.
And it is about time we settled the books in this family.
Cindy gritted her teeth. So, you planned this whole thing tonight? Amy, you are dead wrong. Thomas only wants me. He only proposed to you tonight to get under my skin. I did not bother to reply. But deep down, I was absolutely certain this time I was going to win. The next day, the joint press release from the Harrison Group and the Newell Group went viral. In the official photo, I stood next to Thomas, holding the signed contract. Comment section went, some people loved the drama of a last-minute bride swap in a high-profile merger. Others asked if Cindy had run away from her own wedding. And someone even turned her who marries their bro? Quote into a viral clip plastered with laughing emojis. Cindy stayed locked to her room, but she was highly active on social media. Some people really love picking up the scraps, taking a joke way too seriously. Just because bros are having a fight does not mean an outsider gets to cut the line. I ignored it all that afternoon. Thomas invited me to his office to discuss the project. When I walked in, he was reviewing the risk assessment part of the proposal I had brought the night before. He flipped to the page and looked up at me. "Did you write this part?"
Yes.
Cindy showed me a very similar version a while ago. I paused. He added flatly, but she could not explain any of the data. When I asked, I did not know whether to laugh or feel bitter. So it was not that no one noticed. It was just that no one had ever called her out before. Thomas closed the folder. "Amy, there is something we need to make clear before we go any further." I looked at him. "Go ahead." I used to love Cindy. He was brutally honest. It was not a casual crush like the rumors say. I genuinely wanted a future with her. My fingers tightened slightly around my purse. He continued. "And I let her get away with a lot, because I thought she was just afraid of commitment. But last night she used my family and our business partners as props to prove how edgy and different she is. I am not playing her games anymore." The office was completely quiet. "Are you telling me this because you want me to step down?" I asked.
No.
Thomas looked at me. "I'm telling you this so you know you are not walking into a clean, simple relationship. If that bothers you, you can walk away right now." I was silent for a moment. "Thomas, I did not sign that contract because I am in love with you, either. I did it because I want my name, my career, and my rightful place. I do not care who you loved in the past. But from this moment on, if I'm going to be your fiancé, I expect you to maintain the boundaries of a fiancé." A flash of surprise crossed his eyes. Then he smiled.
Deal.
He pushed another document toward me. "Put those boundaries in writing." One clause stood out clearly. "During the engagement, both parties shall maintain a united public front. Neither party shall engage in flirtatious behavior with third parties or tolerate ambiguous relationships that could damage the partnership." I signed it. Thomas signed it right after. As the pen left the paper, I found it almost funny. Other couples rely on vows. We rely on legally binding clauses. But clothes are better. At least when they are written down. Nobody can pretend they forgot. That evening, Cindy crashed a gathering with Thomas's friends. Wearing a black leather motorcycle jacket, she walked in and tried to slide into the seat right next to Thomas, just like she always did. But I had already placed my designer bag on that seat. "Cindy, the boys' table is over there," I said, pointing to the other side of the room. That table was packed with the guys from their social circle. One of them laughed. "Hey, Cindy, come on over. The real bro table is here." Cindy's face stiffened. "Amy, do not be childish." I kept my expression perfectly serious. "You said it yourself. You and Thomas are just bros. Brothers sit at the bro table. What is the issue?" She looked at Thomas. Her eyes held that familiar practiced look of wounded innocence. In the past, that look had worked every single time. But Thomas did not even look up. He simply handed me the menu. "What do you feel like eating?" Cindy stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, before finally stomping over to the guys' table, pulled out my phone and created a group chat. Group name Thomas's Bro Zone Management. I added Cindy and every guy in the room. "Since you are all brothers, please post in this group if anyone gets drunk, has car trouble, or needs to vent. Let's avoid calling my fiancé individually in the middle of the night." The entire room went dead silent. Cindy stared at me across the table. "Don't you think you are overstepping?" Thomas set his glass down. "It is not overstepping. It is called boundaries." He looked directly at Cindy. "From now on, use the group chat if you need something." Cindy's eyes immediately welled with tears. "Thomas, seriously? You are doing this to me?" His voice was completely flat. "Yes, I let things slide in the past, which gave you the wrong impression. I won't make that mistake again." At that moment, the proud, untouchable facade Cindy had built for herself finally cracked. But she still did not believe it. She convinced herself that Thomas was just putting on a show. She thought that if she just pushed a little harder, he would eventually come crawling. The wedding planning meeting was held at the Harrison headquarters. Cindy arrived even earlier than I did. She was sitting on Thomas's left, her legs crossed, acting as if she still owned the place. Thomas walked into the conference room and took one look at her. "Cindy, that seat is reserved for my fiancé." Her face flushed. I walked over and sat down. The wedding planning agency began going through the schedule. Press conference, media, Q&A, project signing, engagement ceremony, family dinner. The coordinator asked for the list of bridesmaids and groomsmen. Cindy suddenly spoke up. "I am not doing the bridesmaid thing." She leaned back in her chair, her tone lazy and dismissive. "I do not do dresses, and I do not care for girly traditions. Just put me in Thomas's groomsmen lineup. I nodded. Sure, that works. She blinked. Caught off guard, I turned to the coordinator. Put Cindy in the groomsmen lineup. Make her outfit a black tailored suit. She stands with the guys. And reserve 3 minutes for her speech. The topic is wishing my bro a happy engagement. Someone in the room muffled a laugh. Cindy glared at me. Amy, are you intentionally trying to humiliate me? I raised my eyes to meet hers. Didn't you choose the bro label yourself? She gritted her teeth. I am not like them. How so? She could not answer. I continued. You are a member of the bride's family, so you could sit in the family section. Or you can stand with the groomsman as his bro. What exact identity do you want to have next to Thomas? The conference room fell into a dead silence. My mother quickly spoke up. Amy,
Do not talk to your sister like that.
she is just being her usual candid self. Thomas flipped through the itinerary and said coolly, contracts and schedules do not care about being candid. They only care about designated roles. Cindy's face turned white. This was what she feared most. Because once her role was clearly defined, she could no longer use the bro excuse to demand romantic ambiguity. Nor could she use her status as a woman to demand special treatment. After the meeting, she cornered me in the hallway. Amy, do you actually think you have one? I looked at her and raised an eyebrow.
Have I not?
She sneered. Do you have any idea how long Thomas has loved me? In high school, I mentioned a stomachache once, and he ran through a thunderstorm to bring me medicine. In college, when I got into an argument with someone, he literally caught the next flight back from abroad.
Just to stand by me.
Motorcycle I rode for my birthday. He spent 6 months on a waiting list just to buy it for me. Her voice grew more confident.
He is just angry right now.
He is mad that I would not say yes. So he is using you to hurt me. Do not flatter yourself. I did not say a word, thinking she had finally intimidated me. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Believe it or not, all it takes is for me to say I regret it, and he will come running back to me in a heartbeat. I looked at her, and suddenly I could not help but laugh. Cindy, why do you assume people will wait around in the exact same spot forever? Her expression darkened.
Because he loves me.
Just then, Thomas walked out of the conference room. Cindy's eyes instantly welled with tears.
Thomas, I really did not mean it that way at the party.
I was just overwhelmed when you suddenly proposed to her. Stop using Amy to get back at me, please. She offered the apology casually, with the same easy confidence she had used to pacify him 100 times before. But Thomas did not move.
Cindy,
He said, I am not using anyone to get back at you. Amy is my wife. Cindy froze. Your wife. She looked at me, letting out a sharp laugh, as if she had just heard the most ridiculous joke. Your engagement ceremony has not even happened.
who are you?
Trying to fool. I reached into my designer bag, pulled out 2 official marriage certificates, and held them up in front of her. The photos showed Thomas and me sitting side by side, smiling. The red official seal was perfectly clear. The date of registration was this morning. Cindy, if you truly believe he is still in love with you, I said calmly, why don't you try convincing him to divorce me first? The silence in the hallway of the Harrison headquarters was heavy, broken only by the hum of the central air conditioning and the distant murmur of the city.
Below.
Cindy stared at the 2 red booklets in my hand. Her manicured hand, tipped with sharp, chrome-painted acrylics, hovered in the air as if she wanted to snatch them. Yet she was terrified that touching them would make the reality undeniable. This is a joke, she whispered, her voice cracking, losing that effortless, low-register tomboy pitch she always used when she wanted to sound laid back. You paid someone to make these fake props. Thomas, tell me this is a
Joke.
We've known each other since we were 7. You don't just go and register a marriage with her. Thomas didn't look at her. He didn't even shift his posture. He gently took the certificates from my fingers, slipped them back into my designer bag, and zipped. It closed with a quiet, decisive click. Cindy, Thomas said, his voice entirely devoid of the warmth he had spent 15 years wrapping her in. I don't joke about my legal status.
And I.
Certainly don't joke about my wife. Wife. The words seemed to physically recoil in Cindy's throat.
She took a step
back, her motorcycle jacket creaking. You've been in love with me your entire life. You bought me a custom Ducati for my birthday. You flew across the Atlantic because I had a stupid argument with some girl in my dorm. You can't just erase that because I teased you at a party. I didn't erase it, Thomas replied calmly, looking her straight in the eyes. You did. When you stood in front of 100 business partners, laughed in my face, and called my proposal gross. You made it clear that my affection was Nothing more than a cheap accessory to prove how unbothered and edgy you
are.
I simply took you at your word. He turned to me, his expression softening just enough to show a polite, steady respect. Are you ready to leave, Amy? The driver is waiting downstairs. Yes, I said, offering a small, polite smile. The city registry office was quite exhausting this morning. As we walked past her, Cindy grabbed my shoulder. Her grip was tight, her nails digging into the soft fabric of my blazer. Amy, you think you've won?
He is.
Using you. Every time he looks at you, he's going to see the girl he actually wanted. You're just a placeholder. I didn't flinch. I slowly turned my head, looking down at her hand on my shoulder until she reluctantly let go. Even if I am a placeholder, Cindy, I murmured, I am a legally registered placeholder with a 50% share in the Newell Harrison joint venture. What do you have? A motorcycle in a garage you can't pay the insurance on. Anymore? Her face drained of color. We walked to the elevator, leaving her standing alone in the long, sterile corridor. The drive back to the Newell family estate was silent. Thomas sat next to me, his laptop open as he reviewed the legal details of the merger. His fingers danced over the keyboard with a steady, unhurried rhythm. He didn't try to make small talk, and I appreciated that. We had signed a contract. We didn't need to fake an immediate, sweeping romance. When the car pulled up to the grand iron gates of the Newell mansion, the front doors were already thrown wide open. My father, Arthur Newell, was pacing the marble foyer, his face flushed to deep, angry crimson. My mother, Helen, was sitting on the velvet chaise lounge, holding a damp cloth to her forehead while frantically scrolling through her
phone.
The moment Thomas and I stepped through the door, my father slammed his hand down on the console table, rattling a priceless porcelain vase. What is the meaning of this? Arthur roared, pointing a trembling finger at
me.
The Harrison Group just released a joint statement. You registered a marriage? Without consulting me? Without consulting the board. Dad, I said, stepping forward, keeping my voice steady and measured.
The
Harrison Group's investment was contingent on a family alliance. Cindy publicly rejected Thomas and called the Harrison family's proposal trash. If I hadn't stepped in, the Harrison board would have pulled the entire funding package by 9 o'clock this morning. I saved your company. You humiliated your sister. Helen cried from the couch, her voice trembling with theatrical grief. Cindy has been crying in her room since she got back. She said you set her up. You've always been jealous of her, Amy. Because she's healthy, because she's popular, because she's always been the star of this family. Jealous. I let out a short, cold laugh. Of a 30-year-old woman who still acts like a high school bully and refers to her fiancé as her bro? Mother, let's be practical. If Cindy had married Thomas, she would have ruined the alliance within a month with her childish antics. She doesn't want a husband. She wants a fan club. Silence. Arthur snapped, though his eyes darted nervously toward Thomas, who was standing quietly behind me, hands slipped casually into his pockets. Arthur, Thomas spoke up, his voice low but carrying an undeniable authority. The legal registration is complete. Amy is my wife, and she is now the primary representative of the Newell Group on the Ecotech Corridor project. If you attempt to force a divorce, or if you strip Amy of her executive title, my family's legal team will trigger the default clause. We will withdraw our capital, and we will sue the Newell Group for breach of contract. You will be bankrupt by the end of the quarter. Arthur's mouth opened, then snapped shut. His chest heaved as he struggled to find words. He was a businessman first and a father second. The threat of bankruptcy instantly cooled his rage, replacing it with a cold, calculating
fear.
Thomas. Arthur began, his tone shifting into a strained, placating pitch. We are family now. Surely we can discuss this. Cindy was just overwhelmed. She's always been a free spirit. A free spirit who doesn't understand the boundaries of a legally binding contract, Thomas replied. From now on, all communications regarding the project will go through Amy. If Cindy attempts to interfere, she will be banned from the project sites. He turned to me. I'll let you unpack, Amy. I have a board meeting to attend. I'll have my assistant send over the keys to the penthouse apartment tonight. We should move your things out of here as soon as possible.
Thank you, Thomas, I said.
As he walked out, the front door closing with a heavy thud, the atmosphere in the foyer turned toxic. My mother stood up, her face twisted in a look of pure disgust. You snake. You've been planning this, haven't you? Sitting in your room, playing the sick, fragile little girl, waiting for your sister to make one mistake, so you could steal her life. I didn't steal her life, Mother, I said, walking past her toward the stairs. I just stopped living in her shadow. And if I were you, I'd start looking at the company accounts. Because now that I'm in charge of the Harrison Project, the days of the Newell Group funding Cindy's expensive hobbies are officially over. Over the next 2 weeks, the shift in the corporate landscape was swift and brutal. I moved into Thomas's luxury penthouse downtown. It was a spacious, minimalist apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. We kept to our own wings, maintaining a professional, respectful distance. We had breakfast together every morning, discussing the daily project updates over coffee like two seasoned business partners. There were no grand declarations of love, but there was a quiet, growing mutual respect. At the Newell Group headquarters, however, the tension was reaching a boiling point. Cindy had refused to accept her demotion. Despite being stripped of her official duties on the Ecotech Corridor project, she still showed up to the office every day, wearing her signature oversized blazers and combat boots, trying to project an aura of unbothered confidence. The crisis came on a Tuesday morning during the first major joint presentation with the Harrison Group's executive board. I was sitting at the head of the conference table, my tablet open, presenting the revised financial projections I had spent the last 3 days perfecting. Thomas sat opposite me, nodding in approval as I went through the slides. Suddenly, the heavy double doors of the conference room swung open. Cindy walked in, holding a sleek black leather portfolio. She had a confident, smug grin on her face. Behind her, my father looked incredibly uncomfortable, but he didn't stop her. "Sorry I'm late, guys," Cindy said, her voice loud and casual as she strolled over to the projection screen. But I realized my little sister here might have missed a few critical flaws in her data. After all, Amy's always been more focused on textbooks than real-world application. The board members murmured in confusion. Thomas's expression instantly turned ice cold. "Cindy," Thomas said, his voice flat, "this is a closed board meeting. You are not on the committee." "Come on, Thomas, don't be like that," Cindy chuckled, waving her hand dismissively. "We're all family here. I'm just looking out for the company. I brought the real proposal, the one we actually discussed last year before someone decided to rush into a marriage just to get a promotion." She stepped up to the podium, plugged her flash drive into the system, and clicked open a file. "This is the optimized risk assessment for the southern sector," Cindy announced, proudly, gesturing to the slide on the screen. "It slashes the environmental compliance costs by 40%. Amy's version is way too conservative because she's too afraid of taking risks." I sat quietly, not saying a word. I didn't get angry. In fact, I felt a strange sense of relief. Thomas looked at the screen, then looked at me. I gave him a subtle, reassuring nod. "Cindy," I said, my voice echoing clearly in the quiet room, "where did you get this data?" "From my own research, obviously," Cindy sneered, crossing her arms. "Unlike you, I don't need to lock myself in a room for 3 days to copy other people's work." "That's interesting," I replied, opening a folder on my tablet and tapping a few keys. "Because the file you just opened has a very specific digital watermark. If you look at the bottom right corner of the slide, there's a small embedded serial number and 2026-07. Cindy blinked, her grin faltering slightly. "What?" "That stands for Amy Newell, July 2026, I explained, projecting my own screen onto the main display. 3 days ago, I noticed someone had accessed my personal cloud drive from an unauthorized device at 2 a.m. The IP address traced back to the computer in your bedroom at the family estate." The room went dead silent. Several board members looked down, coughing uncomfortably. "I knew you would try to steal my proposal, Cindy." I continued, my tone completely calm and professional. "You've been doing it since we were kids." "So?" I left a bait file on my drive. "The presentation you are currently showing the board contains completely fabricated environmental data. If we actually implemented your 40% cut, we would be violating federal wetland protection laws, resulting in an immediate shutdown of the project and a $50 million fine." Cindy's face went from pale to a dark, mortified crimson. She looked at the screen, then at the portfolio in her hand, her fingers trembling. You set me up. This is a lie. Dad, tell them." My father covered his face with his hands, refusing to look up. "Cindy Newell, Thomas stood up, his tall frame dominating the room.
You have
Just admitted to corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, and attempting to sabotage a multi-billion-dollar joint venture. Effective. Immediately, your security badge for this building is revoked. If you are seen on Harrison property again, we will file criminal charges. Thomas. Cindy gasped, tears finally spilling over her eyelashes. You're doing this for her? After everything we've been through? You're throwing me out. You threw yourself out the moment you decided your ego was more important than this company, Thomas said. He turned to the security guards waiting at the
door.
Escort her out. As the guards stepped forward, Cindy looked at me, her eyes filled with a venomous, desperate hatred. But she knew she had no cards left to play.
She
Snatched her flash drive, knocked her leather portfolio to the floor, and rushed out of the room, her heavy boots clicking loudly against the polished hardwood. The victory in the boardroom should have felt sweeter, but as I sat in my office later that afternoon, a lingering sense of unease hung over me. Why had I always been so sick? Since childhood, I had been labeled the fragile one. I had constant bouts of chronic fatigue, unexplained low-grade fevers, and severe digestive issues. Because of my health, my parents had convinced me to stay home, to let Cindy handle the public events, and to hand over my academic achievements to her so she could represent the family. Amy is too weak for the pressure, my mother would always say. Cindy is doing her a favor by taking the stress off her shoulders. I pulled up my personal medical file on my computer. I had been seeing the family doctor, Dr. Vance, for over 15 years. He was a close friend of my mother's. Every month, he would prescribe a specific regimen of imported herbal tonics and high-strength vitamin supplements to boost my immune system. I looked at the chemical breakdown of the supplements that I had recently sent to an independent lab for testing after moving out of the Newell house.
I had
Stopped taking them the day I moved into Thomas's penthouse, and over the past 2 weeks, my energy levels had skyrocketed. I no longer felt the heavy, suffocating fog in my brain. My email chimed. It was the report from the independent laboratory. I clicked it open, my breath catching in my throat as I read the analysis. The custom vitamins prescribed by Dr. Vance didn't contain life-saving nutrients. Instead, they were laced with steady, low-grade doses of thyroid-disrupting compounds and mild, chronic allergens. Taken individually, they were harmless, but taken daily over a decade, they would simulate the exact symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome and autoimmune deficiency. My stomach turned. It wasn't just Cindy's greed. It was a coordinated, domestic prison designed to keep me weak, compliant, and hidden away so that Cindy could shine as the sole golden child of the Newell family. I sat in the dim light of my office for a long time, my hands clenching into fists until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. The time for tears had passed years ago. I printed out the lab report, slipped it into a manila folder, and walked out of the building. I didn't call a driver. I drove myself straight to the Newell family estate. When I entered the mansion, my mother was in the living room, pouring herself a
cup of tea.
She looked up, her expression instantly hardening when she saw me. What are you doing here, Amy? Haven't you done enough damage to this family today? Your father is in his study, trying to salvage the stock price after the stunt you pulled. I walked over to the coffee table and tossed the manila folder onto the glass surface, right next to her teacup. What is this? She asked, frowning. It's a laboratory analysis of the supplements you and Dr. Vance have been forcing me to take since I was 14, I said, my voice dangerously calm. My mother's hand froze midair. The teapot rattled against the porcelain cup. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her eyes darting toward the folder but refusing to touch it. Dr. Vance is a respected physician. Those supplements were imported at great expense to keep you alive. They were imported to keep me sick, I replied, taking a step closer.
They
contain levothyroxine inhibitors and chronic histamines. You didn't want a sick daughter, mother. You wanted a submissive daughter. You wanted someone who would never compete with Cindy, someone whose achievements could be quietly harvested and handed over to your favorite child to build her perfect reputation. That's a lie, a voice screamed from the stairs. Cindy stood there, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She rushed down the stairs, grabbing the folder and ripping it open. As she scanned the pages, her face went from defensive rage to a cold, paralyzed panic. You can't prove we knew about this, Cindy whispered, her voice
trembling.
Dr. Vance prescribed it. It has nothing to do with us. Dr. Vance has already been contacted by my legal team, I said quietly.
Faced
with the threat of losing his medical license and spending 10 years in federal prison for medical malpractice and poisoning. He was remarkably cooperative. He's already signed a deposition stating that mother paid him a monthly retainer to keep my medical status fragile and dependent. My mother collapsed back onto the chaise lounge, her face completely pale.
She
Looked 10 years older in an instant. Amy, she gasped, her voice cracking. We did it for the family. You were always so stubborn, so difficult to control. We needed a unified front for the business. Cindy was the one who could carry the family name forward. The family name is dead, I said, looking at them both with a cold, detached
pity.
I am stripping both of you of your shares in the Newell Group. You will sign them over to me by tomorrow morning, or I will hand this file, along with Dr. Vance's deposition, directly to the district attorney. You wouldn't, Cindy whispered, her voice shaking. We're your family. You stopped being my family the moment you decided my health was a price worth paying for your ego, I said. I turned and walked out of the house, the heavy iron doors closing behind me. For the first time in my life, as I breathed in the cool night air, my chest didn't feel tight. I could breathe perfectly. Deprived of her corporate status, her allowance, and her reputation, Cindy's desperation reached its peak. She had tried to post on social media, claiming she was the victim of a corporate hostile takeover by her greedy, manipulative sister. But the public wasn't buying it. The viral clip of her calling marriage gross and asking who marries their bro had cemented her image as an entitled, narcissistic brat. She had one card left: the boys' club. For years, Cindy had surrounded herself with a circle of wealthy, influential young men from high society. She was the cool girl, the one who could ride motorcycles, drink whiskey straight, and talk sports with them.
She assumed that
if she staged a crisis, one of them, or better yet, Thomas, would come running to play the hero. It was a stormy Thursday night. The rain was pouring in sheets, lashing against the windows of the penthouse. Thomas and I were sitting in the living room. He was reading a financial journal while I was drafting the new corporate restructure for the Newell
Group.
Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the group chat I had created. Thomas's Bro Zone Management. A message had been posted by Cindy. Cindy, my bike slid off the cliff road on Mount Preston. I'm bleeding. My phone battery is at 5%. Thomas, please. Like you used to. It's really bad. Attached was a blurry, dark photo of her custom Ducati lying on its side in the mud, with heavy rain obscuring the background. I looked up from my tablet. Thomas's phone was sitting on the coffee table. It lit up with the same notification. He glanced at it, his face completely expressionless, then looked back down at his journal. Aren't you going to check that? I asked quietly. Why? Thomas replied, not even raising his head. She has a phone with 5% battery, yet instead of calling emergency services, she posted in a group chat with 20 people. It's a performance, Amy. Still, I said, a cold smile playing on my lips. We should be responsible bros and help her out. I picked up my phone, opened the group chat, and began typing. Amy at Cindy, I've just contacted the Mount Preston Search and Rescue Division and forwarded your GPS coordinates. I also dispatched an ambulance and notified the Highway Patrol. Since you are in physical danger, professionals are much better equipped than bros. I paused, then added one more message. Amy, I also forwarded the photo to your insurance company. I noticed the motorcycle's kickstand is clearly visible and fully extended in the mud.
It's
quite impressive how a bike can slide off a cliff road and land perfectly on its
kickstand.
Stay safe. Within seconds, the group chat exploded. Mark, bro, wait, the kickstand is down? Leo, bro, seriously, Cindy? We're in the middle of a literal typhoon warning and you're staging a crash?
Chris, bro.
Man, this is getting weird. I'm out. One by one, the bros she had spent years cultivating began leaving the group
chat.
They were wealthy, influential men who didn't want to be associated with a public laughingstock, especially one who was actively trying to destroy a marriage with the powerful Harrison family. An hour later, the local police department posted a public update on their social media page, thanking a concerned citizen for reporting a stranded motorist on Mount Preston. The post noted that the motorist was found completely uninjured, sitting in a dry, nearby tourist cabin, and had been issued a heavy fine for wasting emergency resources and fabricating a road accident. Cindy's final stunt had completely backfired. She was now officially a pariah, not just in the corporate world, but within her own social circle. 3 months later, the grand ballroom of the Harrison Plaza Hotel was decorated in elegant shades of white and gold. It was the night of our formal wedding reception. Though Thomas and I had registered our marriage months ago, this was the public celebration to solidify the merger of the Newell and Harrison groups. The room was packed with the elite of the business world, politicians, and media. The atmosphere was vibrant, filled with the soft clink of champagne, glasses, and the elegant melodies of a live string quartet. I stood in front of the grand mirror in the bridal suite, wearing a stunning, custom-tailored emerald silk gown. The chronic fatigue was completely gone, my skin was radiant, and my eyes were bright. I looked healthy, confident, and completely in control of my own destiny. The door to the suite opened, and Thomas walked in. He was wearing a classic, black tuxedo that accentuated his tall, broad-shouldered frame.
He stopped in
his tracks, his eyes locking onto me. For a moment, his usual professional, stoic composure slipped, replaced by a look of genuine, breathless admiration. "You look beautiful, Amy," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Thank you, Thomas," I replied, turning to face him. "Are we ready for the grand entrance?" "We are," he said, walking over and offering me his arm. "But before we go out there, I want to give you this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box.
He opened it too.
Reveal a stunning, vintage emerald ring, surrounded by delicate, brilliant cut diamonds. "This belonged to my grandmother," Thomas said quietly. "It's not part of the contract. It's not a business asset. I want you to have it because over the past 3 months, I've realized that marrying you was the best decision I've ever made. Not for the merger. For me." I looked up into his eyes, seeing the deep, sincere warmth reflected in them. The contract we had signed had served its purpose, but over the weeks of working side by side, sharing quiet dinners, and protecting each other from the toxicity of my family, something real had grown between us. "I'd be honored to wear it, Thomas," I murmured. He gently slipped the ring onto my finger, his touch warm and steady. As we walked out into the grand ballroom, the spotlights fell entirely on us. The crowd erupted into applause, cameras flashing as we made our way down the grand staircase. In the back corner of the room, standing near the service entrance, were my parents and Cindy. My father and mother looked small, defeated, and thoroughly sidelined. They had signed over their shares to me to avoid prosecution, and they were now living on a modest, fixed pension I had graciously allowed them. Cindy was wearing a plain, cheap black dress, a far cry from her usual designer leather jackets. She looked pale, exhausted, and completely invisible to the high society crowd that once clamored for her attention. She watched as Thomas leaned down and whispered something in my ear, making me laugh. She looked as though she wanted to scream, to run up and shout that she was the cool one, the star, the one everyone was supposed to love. But she didn't.
Dare.
Security guards were stationed at every exit, with strict orders to escort her out at the first sign of trouble. The music shifted to a slow, elegant waltz. Thomas took my hand, his other hand, resting gently on my waist, and guided me onto the dance floor. "You know," Thomas whispered as we spun slowly under the glittering crystal chandeliers, "people are going to talk about this wedding for a long time." "Let them talk," I said, leaning closer to him, my heart feeling lighter than it ever had before. "They're finally talking about the right sister."